morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Vukosi Mashele. I am your MC for today, the last official week of the African Energy Week. You know, by profession, I'm a physicist, and in physics, we say that energy is not created or destroyed, it is only transmuted from one form to another form. But at the African Energy Week, I think energy is actually generated here, and many ideas are born. And it's absolutely incredible that we could come of one accord to find solutions for our continent. I think from here on, we should start calling ourselves the United States of Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, as we start with today's session, I would like to introduce to the stage Mr. Prince from Century Group, and he will be presenting for us. Let's give him a round of applause.
All right, thank you so much. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and I feel a bit nostalgic that we are almost coming to the end of this year's Africa Energy Week. It's been a wonderful and amazing time here in Cape Town. So I think for today, we quickly just talk through what we see across the continent with respect to securing Africa's energy future. And we'll be looking at infrastructure, the role infrastructure is to play in securing Africa energy security. So just run through some few slides and take follow-up comments. So thank you. Just a brief summary of Century Energy Group. We are an energy infrastructure company, an African infrastructure company with the responsibility of providing oil and gas infrastructure support solutions for oil and gas operations in Africa. We've been in operation for well over 2 decades. And of today, our core business is in the provision, ownership, operations, and maintenance of floating production, storage, and offloading units, and other oil and gas related infrastructure. And just to look through our infrastructure experience, as of today, we own over 3 FPSO fleets, all operating hydrocarbon in offshore Nigeria. And in addition, over the period, we've also operated over 15 FPSOs in Nigeria. And of course, at the moment, we also manage 2 FSOs on behalf of our clients. And before we started infrastructure ownership, we've purely been an operations and maintenance support servicing company. And we saw a gap, and that gap was infrastructure. And for us to be able to deliver the sort of solutions that we needed for our clients, we needed to move away from just a service provider to owning production-related infrastructure. And of course, within the last couple of a decade, we're able to achieve that milestone. And we believe with that sort of experience, we should be able to share our perspective into Africa's energy future and the role that infrastructure is to play. Just a brief overview of our assets, our infrastructure portfolio. These are what you see on the screen are some of the infrastructure that we own and we currently operate on behalf of our clients. The first one is what is the FPSO Tamara Elmina, which we own and operate on behalf of NNPC. It's currently producing for NNPC offshore Nigeria. The second one is FPSO Tamara Tokoni. It's currently located in OML 120, where we produce for the field operator and also utilize the FPSO for alternative crude evacuation for other crude oil operators who require infrastructure support services. And the third one is the Tamara Nanaye, which was demobilized from our last location and is currently in Lagos for remodifications for another deployment. And of course, we also had shown some of our previous projects that we've done, FPSO Mistress, which we manage at some point on behalf of NNPC, and of course the Amada Pekasa. And currently we're also managing the FSO Elia Kaso terminal, which is also located offshore Bonny terminal. And of course, these are also some of the things that we've also done. Now, this is just a brief overview of one of our terminals, the FSO Elia Kaso terminal, which is with a storage capacity of 2 million barrels, currently located offshore Nigeria. Now, this just shows our track record within the last 2 decades. Of course, part of what we've known to be in the industry is our ability to be able to manage operational costs. And of course, we've been able to do that better than most of the operators within the industry. And what we've built within that period is our ability to reduce the per barrel operating costs of oil and gas operations in the locations where we serve. And within the period, we've also been able to operate and own over 3 FPSOs. And combined, we have over 7 million barrels of oil storage capacity within the fleet. And in addition, we also have over 150,000 production capacity across board. In addition to that, we have over 20 years of experience within the space. And one striking thing about the peculiarity about Century Group is that within the last couple of years, we've been able to take local capacity building very seriously. And that has metamorphosed into the fact that we now have over 99% local crew manning all our offshore infrastructure which we operate, which is a major feat and a major shift from what is usually known across the industry. So that's just a brief overview of Century Group. So this just briefly talks about the market profile of what we've seen across board. And of course, we all know that Africa holds a global stage, and beyond that, we also know that the reserve profile of Africa puts her in a very, very strong position in terms of delivering energy security, not just for the continent, but also for the global stage. Of course, the big players remain Nigeria, Libya, and Algeria. And of course, we also see new discoveries in Namibia and also Cote d'Ivoire, and which we believe that once this comes on stream is going to further increase our profile, reserve profile, and all of that. So also, what we've also seen that in terms of population, there's going to be a huge demand growth across the continent because of the sort of youthful age bracket that we have across board. And of course, there's also a much more broader drive for industrialization across the continent, which is also going to fuel a lot of opportunities for us. Then, of course, there is a huge investment gap. And this has been said many times that we cannot achieve Africa's energy future without investments in infrastructure. Most of the key lending DFIs have also estimated that for us to get infrastructure right in Africa, we'll need to do nothing less than over $20 billion worth of investments annually for us to bridge that gap. And it's not a walk in the park, but we believe that a lot of things are changing. Most of the continent, the operators and the governments are beginning to put key policies in place to be able to support this. DFIs are coming on board. We just recently saw the inauguration of the Africa Energy Bank in collaboration with Afrexim and our partners, which we believe that they will be able to unlock some of the funding required to meet infrastructure challenges across the continent. So this just gives a broad perspective as to what is in the market and also some of the opportunities we see. For us, where there are challenges, that is where we see opportunities. So this just gives an overview of what we are dealing with. And also, now, the biggest issue we also see across Africa is the fact why most of the global operators or international operators struggle when they come to Africa. And that is because of the peculiarity of the environment. And one thing stands out, I believe, and it's not just a problem that is peculiar to the continent, but we also see that the cutoff is something that is across board. And what are those issues? They're beginning to perceived risk, local risk and management gaps that they've seen in terms of delivering opportunities like this. Then, of course, underutilized capital and assets. Like I said earlier on, we have a reserve profile of over 8% of the world's oil and gas reserves. But how well have we been able to transform these reserves into economic resource for the continent? That has also been a major challenge. Then, of course, the cost of delivering infrastructure-related projects across the continent is also been a very big challenge for us. So what have we been able to do over time is to see that we have been able to make very bold investments. We got into the business at a time where it was almost impossible for a local energy infrastructure operator to be able to own and operate FPSOs. If we had said that a Nigerian company can own and operate FPSOs on just about almost 3 fleets, nobody would believe that. But as time progressed, we've been able to achieve that. Now you see that that success has replicated in many forms. We now see a lot of operators in Nigeria who are also doing the same thing and expanding the business. So these are some of the areas we see and why most of the international operators struggle in the continent. Then, of course, we have to look at the opportunity window across the continent. And from an infrastructure standpoint, we also believe that we are in a very strong position to be able to support most of the turning those reserves into economic resource. And part of the ways we want to be able to tackle and achieve that is, number one, we are in a position to redeploy infrastructure across various locations and various areas across the continent to support and ensure that stranded oil and gas assets are able to be commercialized and they are able to be turned to economic resource across the continent. As of today, we have over 5 FPSOs and 2 FSOs that are available for redeployment opportunities across the continent. And of course, what this does for us is time to first oil, because you do not have the normal construction risk that you have to deal with if you're to deploy a new build FPSOs to support oil and gas development across the continent. So part of the model we've looked at is getting an existing infrastructure and redeploying that infrastructure across. But of course, for FPSO specific, for you to be able to move one FPSO from one location to the other, that FPSO must undergo some form of modifications. And over time, we've been able to also build a strong capacity that will be able to deploy just that. And currently, we're speaking on that capacity. We are currently doing a similar work in Lagos where we demobilized a producing asset, took it to a yard. Now she's undergoing modifications. And after the modification, she's now going to be redeployed to other locations to support oil and gas operation. And of course, part of the model that we see for Africa is we have to look at a much more broader performance-based concessions. And part of what we've also identified is the fact that most of the international operators are kind of struggling across the continent. And over time, there's been a shift from their core area of expertise. And that is because of the issues that they've had to deal with in order to be able to get the barrels away from the wells to the market. So issues around host community management, security-related issues, political risks, and all of that. These are all issues that have also metamorphosed into their daily activities and skyrocketed their operating costs. So part of what we've now done is to see how we look at that and put a much more incentive-based model where we only get paid per barrel that we produce. So these are some of the options that we've looked at. Then over time, there is need for us to see that even the infrastructure, there is need for the infrastructure integrities to be up and running. And over time, how do we achieve that? Of course, you have to see how you can look at much more broader uptime operations for some of this terminal. Now, we've now say, okay, Century Group's dynamic position. So what is Century Group going to do differently in terms of de-risking Africa infrastructure future? So part of what we've done, and just speaking to our previous capacity and experience, we've been able to absorb risk across board. And what we've done, we've invested our own money, up to almost $500 million of our own funding, and which has been deployed to this infrastructure. And what we've been able to achieve with this sort of commitment is we've been able to mobilize critical infrastructure to support oil and gas operations. We've done that at our own small level, and we believe that there's a lot much to be done across the continent. And for us to be able to achieve that, at least we'll collaborate more with most of the DFIs across the continent. And I think just to digress a bit, within the last couple of years, there's been a struggle financing oil and gas related infrastructure. And now that the direction in America is much more lean towards production, of course, you could hear Mr. President saying, drill, baby, drill. And of course, which also ties into the team, more or less the team for this year's Africa Energy Week, drill, baby, drill. So now drill, baby, drill has brought a new shift in the market. So most of the DFIs who wouldn't touch oil and gas related operations are now coming back to the negotiation table to see how well they can now participate. So I think for us, that also creates a very good opportunity for us. Though it's going to be temporary, we're not sure what the next direction will be after this administration leaves the White House and what the global financing outlook will look like for oil and gas related projects. But we want to be able to ensure that at least Africa is able to source for local funding to support Africa-related infrastructure projects. I know that this is something that has been said over time, over and over, and it's almost sounding like a cliche. We were in the S&P forum yesterday evening, and part of what we were informing them and the forum was, look, we have to look for solutions that will work for the continent. The financing parameters for oil and gas related infrastructure will have to be adjusted for us to be able to secure Africa's energy future in the deployment, through the deployment of infrastructure. Of course, you have to also look at other key areas which we've done, high ROI for not just ourselves as a corporate, but also our investors and partners. Of course, proof of concept is also very crucial, which we've also been able to achieve within the period. Then, of course, you also need to be able to align with global priorities. Energy security is very crucial. Gas monetization is also one of the key areas that all of us are looking at. Of course, though we are focusing on hydrocarbon production, you cannot also rule out emission control. So that is also one of the things that we have to see. Technology will be crucial in this respect. How are we able to control emission? How are we able, in the deployment of infrastructure, how do we manage that? So I think those are some of the key points that we also need to look at. Now, our value proposition to the continent is, of course, we want to be able to unlock idle FPSOs. We want to be able to deploy FPSOs to commercialize stranded oil and gas assets across the continent. We've seen a lot of opportunities, not just in Nigeria where we operate, but we also see opportunities across the continent in markets like Angola, Cote d'Ivoire, Ivory Coast, and of course Namibia with a huge reserve profile as with a lot of discoveries and not yet developed. That also presents a lot of markets for us. Gabon is also one of the markets we're also looking at. We're also looking at supporting the Equatorial Guinea, Angola, and the rest of it. So these are some of the value propositions and which we are pitching to investors. And we believe that for us to get infrastructure right for Africa, there's a lot of collaboration that needs to be done. So this is just a brief overview. And in conclusion, I would just say that infrastructure will remain the backbone for Africa oil and gas energy security. Of course, we can say that while the continent's infrastructure deficit creates a lot of challenge for us in Century Group, we see opportunities in that. And what we've also looked at, the way forward lies in scaling up capital investments for infrastructure in Africa. And of course, for these who look through and rely more on the key DFIs across the continent, Afrexim Bank, the Africa Finance Corporation, of course, the newly inaugurated Energy Bank will also play a crucial role in this. And there's need for strengthening partnerships and embracing innovation to ensure that Africa not only meets its own energy needs, but also contributes to the global energy security. And I would like to end by saying that, look, the future of Africa's oil and gas energy security in the coming days and months and years will not be determined by the size of its reserves, but by the scale and efficiency of its infrastructure. And to end the brief discussion and to take follow-up comments, we'll say that it is time for us to come together and build Africa's energy future. And as Century Group, we will be relying and we are always open to collaborate with partners across the continent to achieving this. Thank you very much, and we'll take comments for now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Prince. A round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. It's time for us to come together and build Africa's energy future. That is absolutely incredible. Do we have any questions for Mr. Prince? Any questions? Going once.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, as you mentioned, collaboration is vital for supporting Africa's energy needs. How do we upskill local content here?
Well, I think for us, local content is very crucial. You see local content a bit much broader in some markets, and some other markets is still it's still growing. And how do we scale up local market? I think capacity building is one of those key areas we need to look at. There must be much more local participation in the business. And speaking from as a local operator point of view, we got into the business at a time where it's almost impossible for a local operator to own and operate an FPSO. It was left for the likes of Shell, Total, and the rest of it. But today, we've been able to build capacity, and we've been able to scale up that capacity. And what that has also been able to do is to transfer that capacity, not just to the environment where we operate, but transfer that capacity across the continent. And part of what we are also going to look at for Outlook for Century Group is deploying that local capacity in those key markets that we've seen across the continent, and also in turn building capacity in those markets to ensure that the local population there who have interest in this business grow that capacity to be able to participate in the business alongside the oil majors. So there are a lot of, you cannot talk about local content capacity scaling up without building that capacity. And of course, collaboration is also very crucial. And of course, you know that there's no way you're going to do it alone. You have to collaborate. You have to collaborate. You have to collaborate. So in a short response to your comment, collaboration is key, and much more importantly, capacity building.
A round of applause, ladies and gentlemen.
Thanks for having us. Thank you.